No, I think it's time for you to go to the gym. You need to get in some shape, man. Gosh, it's just not very fit. Thanks for coming. Really
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
First things, if you haven't read the book, it's awesome.
That was horrible.
And you get right in with the book. The first page, you talk about you're in deployment and all of a sudden you realize that you're in such phenomenal pain that you have to go to the morphine drip, which you were told if you really are in bad pain, this is the one thing that can help. And yet it doesn't help, not because it's not working, but as you said just a moment ago to me, it was really that bad, the pain.
Yeah, it was a moment, you know, I'd been injured and I briefly wake up in the hospital in Germany. I'm not real sure how I got there and what was going on. But I had a morphine drip in my hand, the button, and it's like I remember somebody saying, hit this if you're in pain, and I'm hitting it, nothing's happening, I'm still in pain, is all I know. And then at some point I start hitting the nurse call button. And as I'm doing that, you know, this is Christmas Eve, I can hear children singing Christmas carols out in the hallway. Now at this point, I don't know where I am. You know, when I got hit, when that explosion goes off, it knocked me unconscious. This has been a couple of days, and I wake up, and this is happening, and I'm hitting the nurse call button. And as I'm doing that, this male nurse comes in and says to me, you know, we are away from our families right now, and some locals came to sing us Christmas carols, and you were being rude. And I remember, I will never forget that moment, because I remember looking at him and his name tag and trying to repeat his name over and over again. And as I started doing that, my concentration shifted from the pain to the anger at him. And then I fell back to sleep and woke up the next morning. It was Christmas Day. And that's when they were flying me out. And I didn't know what was going on at the time, but fast forward a little bit, Jerry Edson was my platoon leader and in the Humvee with me when I got hit. And he was also taken to Germany. And later we talked about it. And he said he remembers that being at Germany, and he said it was a National Guard group out of like Mississippi or Georgia or something, and they were deployed to Germany. They were a bunch of nurses. And he said they were all super nice. But it may be possible that this one particular nurse at that particular moment was having a bad day. But it affected me where I had this anger, which actually, as I'm saying that now, it took the pain away because the anger took over. But it was a moment that I'll never forget.
We'll get to Christmas, because Christmas plays a role later in the book. But before I do that, you mentioned that the National Guard, you said, I really don't want to take a slight at the National Guard, but our training, our basic training alone is significantly different than what they do in a month.
Well, you know, yeah, not the basic training that, you know, it's we train every day.
Right.
You know, it's what we do. It was our job. And the National Guard, yeah, not taking anything against them. I mean, these are men and women who have a profession somewhere else and want to do their part. And 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, they train and they wear the uniform. And they're great for national security or natural disaster. But they were put into situations they never should have been. They were put in combat without the proper training. And that's actually not even taking a jab at them. It's at the leadership that was putting them there. Because that was a bad mistake. Because when we deployed on that second deployment, there was a National Guard unit that was there. And they sat, hunkered down, and they said to us, just sit here until your time is up. We're like, no, we have a job to do. And because they just sat there were explosives everywhere. Things were booby-trapped. You know, it was just one horrible event after another. And that was a common occurrence that even after my injury, my buddies said they would run across. And it was nothing against those guys. They were just trying to get through what they could. But the training is different.
What was the hardest part for you when you experienced that? Is there a frustration level? You're in the hospital and obviously you don't know where you are. You mentioned how frustrating it was, and then actually go to Walter Reed and how you were actually more angered by the fact that you're hurt in a hospital because you had prepared yourself to perhaps die overseas, but now you're back.
You know, that sounds crazy to say, but you do. You deploy with the mentality, you've done your will. I mean, can you think of any other job that a 19-year-old has a will made? But when you go to combat, you go with the possibility of death. And the more you can accept that, the better you can do your job. And that's the way I saw it. I was like, all right, I'm either going to come home fine and continue deploying and retire in the military, or I will die in combat. And I never expected to wake up in the hospital one day and 2 of my limbs be gone. And for that, I mean, that shook my world, because I was like, I was not mentally prepared for this.
That was like a purgatory for you, because now you're in a facility where you didn't think you were going to be, and now you can't deploy anymore.
Yes, and that's one thing I always tell people. It was detrimental to lose my arm and my leg, but I also lost my career.
Yeah.
A career that I stumbled upon just because of 9/11. Like when I joined the military after September 11th, I didn't see it as a career. I was just doing my part as an American. But then once I got in, I found that I loved it and I fit in. And then suddenly, on just my second deployment, 3 months into it, it's like I just wake up one day and it's gone. And that was one of the several things I battled with, because there was the physical and learning to walk again and be a person missing 2 limbs, but also finding a career. I mean, there are people that go their entire lives and never find that happiness in a career, and it was taken away overnight.
I want to go back to that, especially with Christmas. Your deployment in 2003. I don't know if anything else in the book struck me more than this. You said you turned down the opportunity to go home for 2 weeks during Christmas because you had seen guys come back, they had lost that edge, and you no longer felt like you could go home. So you turned it down, you lied to your wife, you said you're too low on the totem pole, and instead you stayed, and you said, I think it was something along the lines of, I was falling in love with my job and being overseas and being deployed, and I was falling out of love with Brandy.
Yes, that was something that, that was my first marriage, and we were together when 9/11 happened, and I joined the military behind her back. And then once I was in, it started to just crumble, because she took a back seat in my life because the military was taking over. And that deployment, I had the opportunity to go home, and I said no. And then she saw that other, soldiers, spouses of her friends were coming home, and I told her I was too low on the totem pole, so it's not happening. She won't know until she reads this book exactly what happened that I turned it down, because I didn't. I saw guys they said that 2 weeks flew by, and then they just weren't in the mindset when they came back, and I didn't want to lose that. I loved what I was doing. I enjoyed being deployed, so I just would rather have stayed, and that's what I did.
When you came back, eventually you ended up spending 10 days in jail from driving under the influence. Mm-hmm. And you talked about in the book specifically how the jail itself was a learning experience, but what really helped you was talking to other people that were there.
Yes.
And learning that they were fathers as well as you.
Yeah. When I got there, I was just so intrigued. I mean, first of all, it was embarrassing but it was necessary to put in the book that, yes, I was driving under the influence. And it had happened more than once. And a lot of times, police officers would pull me over, and here I was at a Purple Heart tag. I'd see them shine their flashlight. They saw I was missing an arm and a leg. They felt bad for me. And they would ask how far I had to go home, and they'd let me go. But this one particular night, this officer, he arrested me, and I go to court. And then during one of the returns to court, I made the judge mad, and he threw me in for contempt of court for 10 days, no bail, no bond. And when I got there, I was already upset that it happened, but there's nothing I could do about it. But I was very intrigued by these other people in there. Yeah. And a lot of them, this was a county jail, but it was part of the federal system. A lot of them were heading on their way to prison. And I wanted to know their stories. And one guy was like, what, are you writing a book? I said, I don't know, I might. And as I talked to these guys, a lot of them, like this one guy, he had been in and out of juvenile detention facilities. His parents died at a young age, and we talked. And I told him, I said, you could relate to some people that are going through that same thing that I couldn't. I'm a veteran that lost an arm and a leg. I can relate to that, but not your childhood and your experiences. And as I was telling him that, I was telling him, you could come out of this and do something with it and help other people. And it's like, as I was telling that, I was realizing maybe the same could be for me. And then I also saw that a lot of these people were way worse off than I was. And it was a reminder that I wasn't that far down to the hole yet, that I could easily come out of this. So it was one of those there was a couple of things in the book that were these moments where I'm like, it's not that bad, keep moving forward, don't let this hold you back.
Yeah. You dropped out of school as a freshman in high school, right? Mm-hmm. If you look back on that, because we hear so many people, especially influential people, talk about education and how important it is. Do you regret that decision to do that?
You know, if I was sitting in front of a whole bunch of school kids, I would say one thing, but I'm very passionate about education. I have 2 of my sisters are teachers.
Yeah.
And my older sister was mad when I dropped out. She was very upset. But one thing that she eventually said to me was, I matured after I dropped out. There was a maturity that came through that I was forced to do because I went to the workforce and I started working with people that were twice my age. I wasn't thinking long term when I dropped out of school. I was working construction over the summer, and then suddenly I was in the classroom and I was like, I'm not making any money sitting here. So at the time, it made sense. And you know, it may have turned out fine in the long run, but the differences I could have made actually going to school and the education I could have gotten and the experiences that I could have learned from. I mean, high school is not just education. There's a lot of things you experience there that I missed out on. I jumped too quickly into the adult world. And I think that almost hit me again later on in life where I wasn't doing the right things because I was supposed to be an adult and I was acting like a child.
Do you think you would have joined after 9/11 had you gone to high school and got a diploma?
Yes. So that wouldn't have changed. The feelings, the emotions I got just watching that on television, you know, being in Alabama, you know, when I got the call to turn on the news, that first plane had hit, it was all about those that were left in the towers. And then I saw that second plane. And I remember the screams around the cameraman, and it was horrifying and sad. And I watched for a while, then I went for a run, and on that run, I was like, I've got to go in the military. You know, I have to be part of this retaliation of what is happening to our country. And that would have happened no matter what.
I have some stats here, I think, Noah, that are really telling. There's 15 plus million, over the last 15 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, 2.5 million people, men and women, have served. That represents only 1% of Americans. So there's really a feeling of Americans having no skin in the game.
No.
How can people that aren't joining the military, how can other people make a difference or have an impact?
I've never, yes, it is a small percentage, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, it takes, if everyone deployed, well, then that's going to hurt the economy. That's going to hurt the country. There have to be people here. And people do, I've met so many people, because I have a visible injury, that almost feel they have to apologize to me for not joining the military. I'm like, no, we all play a part. This is one country. We are a whole, and everyone is important. And I've been asked before, what can we do to help? Well, I'll tell you, as a visibly injured veteran, I have found that no matter where I go in this country, in the North, in the South, East Coast, West Coast, people are supportive and thank me for my service. No matter how they feel about the war, none of that matters to me. But they show support. And I've always told people that a simple thank you goes a long way. And if you pay attention, a visible injury is not the only telling sign of a veteran. It may be a hat, it may be an emblem on their jacket or a sticker on their car or their tag. There is something that is going to tell you that they're a veteran. Or pay attention to them, somebody else say something. And I'll tell you what, I've met Vietnam veterans and thanked them for their service, and they get emotional. And it's because we don't always express that. Yeah. And we could all do more of that. You know, when it comes to what can we do, let's show our appreciation. Let's just say thank you.
Yeah. The resources that vets can provide as in their day-to-day job. I mean, the teamwork, the camaraderie. You know, at HuffPost, like we always talk about trying to work together, but veterans have an unbelievable ability to do that because they have these incredible skills. There's 1 million vets that came home last year, and most of them are without a job, without a significant opportunity, without a career, as you mentioned. Why do you think that is? And then taking a step further, is there anything that you would say this can be done or this should be done because veterans can make a difference in the workplace?
Well, I think there is, you know, there's a lot of support for our military, but there is a big gap between making that connection of civilians and military. And I think we could bridge that gap with just knowledge. And that comes from us veterans as well. We cannot, you know, I've met veterans who think, well, we've worked so hard, you know what I mean? This is what we do. And then I go to civilians and they don't work that hard. I'm like, no, there are some, you know, civilians, just because somebody doesn't serve in the military doesn't mean they don't work hard. And that is a dumb idea that veterans need to realize is not true. And for civilians, it needs to be that veterans aren't this walking disaster. That we are less than 1% of the population that was willing to give up life and limb for this country. And we know how to work as a team. And the best way to bridge that gap, and I'm a big advocate for this, is putting out those positive stories. There's a lot of veterans out there that are very successful, whether they're, injured or not, and that needs to be put out there, because I'm a true believer that if you put out positive, you're going to get positive. And it's like if you think about Vietnam, most of us think of that Lieutenant Dan. You think of the Vietnam veteran that, is just like Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, but do you know that there are tons of successful CEOs that served in Vietnam, got out, got help to get through the issues they went through, went back to school, and they've become very successful. Those are the stories that need to be told. The veterans, because the more we share those positive stories, the better it is. One, it reminds the veteran community, hey, we have a lot to be proud of. Do not give up just because you're out of the military. Because what I see a lot is what I call the Al Bundy theory, where, the 4 touchdowns in a football game, and that's all he lived for. That's all he talked about. Yeah. But that's a chapter in your life. Be proud of it, but start another chapter. Me, I'm 3-4 chapters past it now. I still talk about that chapter, but it doesn't run my life. And veterans need to see that. And then also putting out positive stories that's going to show civilians, hey, look, these are a group of men and women that are willing to work hard, and we will do good in your workforce.
Yeah, I think, Secretary Gates has talked a lot about the ability of veterans to come back and have a significantly positive role in the workplace. And it's this baffling, like you said, that we have so few of them working. Is there a frustration level among veterans that they feel like they're just as qualified and yet they can't find it?
No, the only side of that I can speak on is as a veteran. Yeah. And as a veteran, I would say to other veterans, go after it. Go after it like you would anything else in the military. If you wanted a certain job, if you wanted to be Ranger qualified, or you wanted to shoot expert, whatever it is, go after it. And so I can only speak from that end. And that's where I would push the veterans to go after what they want and be the success that they know they can.
Yeah. So you do Dancing with the Stars. You finished 3rd, and you say in the book, people said you should have won. You felt like you deserved to finish 2nd or 3rd, not 1st. What was the reaction from that, Noah, and what did you learn from that experience? Because you said even in the book, I'm not a real dancer.
No, I am not.
You did great.
I know. I had a good dance partner, Shauna Burgess.
Shauna was great.
Yes. Her choreography, what she taught me, she was able to guide me around the dance floor and make it look like I was leading. She was so good at what she did. And then the people that voted for me and kept me going, and the people that reached out to me and said that I was inspiring them, that motivated me to push harder each week. The show itself, Rumor Willis took 1st, and she earned it and deserved it. I watched her every week, and she put so much pressure on herself each week. And to come in 3rd, I went into that, I'd never watched the show before. I didn't even want to do it. They talked me into it. I thought it'd last 2-3 weeks. And the fact that I went 10 weeks, I did every dance. Shauna was able to share my story through dance for 10 weeks. Yeah. And I came in 3rd. I could not be happier with that.
If you haven't seen it, I think you said in the book that 3 of the dances have 30 million or 40 million views
on week 5, I did a dance, and within 1 week had 40 million views on YouTube, the most views of any dance in the history of Dance with the Stars. Then my last dance, the freestyle dance we did, has over 40 million views. So I have the top 2 dances in the history of Dance with the Stars. And the advantage is I don't have to put that ugly trophy anywhere in my house. So I think I won.
I think that's better than winning. You did win. That's awesome. Noah, and I'm sure the audience will want to know this, but for you, what do you see next for you? Talk about moving chapters and experiencing new things. What's next for you down the road in the near future?
I said earlier, I'm a big advocate for pushing the positive story of veterans, and that's one thing I want to do. Whatever avenue of approach that is, that's what I want to do. I want to push those to really share their stories and do more. The season after me of Dancing with the Stars wanted Alex Scarlettos, that was one of the 3 men that stopped the gunman in France. They wanted him on Dance with the Stars, and they called me Dina Katz, the executive producer, and said, he wants to talk to you. I said, all right, we'll give him my number. Well, we talked for 3 days. I could tell he wanted to, but he wasn't sure.
Like you.
Yeah. And I said to him, I said, the last thing I said to him that third day, I said, Alex, I said, you have to do it. Not just for you, not just for your buddies that were in friends with you, but you owe it to all the veterans. Because we have to keep this positivity going. And he understood that, and he did it. And after a couple of weeks, he texted me and said, thank you. He was loving it. Absolutely. He did good. I think he came in third.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to outdo me. So I'm glad he just got third.
I could say, like, for you, I met you before for 10, 15 minutes, and I felt like I walked in the room, and this is my experience with a lot of vets, especially, guys like you that come back, and they've been back for a few years. It's like there is such a infectious energy, that positivity, and that's so cool. Like, you mentioned people saying, okay, thank you for your services. Do you ever think to yourself, like, I could do more, or I should have done more? Like, do you feel that sometimes, especially because you didn't get to deploy again?
There is. All through life, you always wonder if I could do more, if I did do more. When it comes to, my attitude in everyday life, I've got to mention that my kids have been my biggest inspiration.
Dedicated the book to them in the first page.
Yeah. And they helped me through my depression without them even knowing it. And it was because, one of the things that happened in my depression, I walked out of the living room one day, and they were all 3 sitting there. And I realized that I was setting the example for my 2 boys. And that's what they're going to grow up to be. And for my little girl, I was setting the example of what a man should be. And that's what she would look for one day. And it terrified me. So I turned things around. But even to this day, I'm very happy with my life. I have a great relationship with my children. But I remind myself every day to be the best father I can be, first and foremost. And if that means that, I end up going on a dancing show and pushing myself as hard as I can, well, that's just me trying to do the best I can to show them that there are no excuses in life. Do the best you can do. And that is honestly how I live my life. And it keeps me happy because, if you were to ask me if I could go back in time and not get injured, or if I could have my arm and leg back, be back in the military, I'd say no. Because now, when I was in, I was okay with dying. I'm 34 now. I'm so close to my 3 kids. I don't have that anymore. I don't have what it takes to be that soldier. I fear death more than I did. I don't think about it all the time. It's not stressing me out. But I do worry. I've got so much to teach my children. I have so much to do for them, to care for. And that's all I want to do is be that for them. And if that means that if I went back in time and didn't get injured, that I would lose that, well then getting injured and going through that depression was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Lastly, before I turn to the audience, a lot of what I read and spoken to some vets have said that what's scarier for them is coming back and actually starting their new lives back in the States, which is crazy when you think about scarier than being overseas and fighting the war.
Well, this is something that is not just scary for veterans. If you are a person that has set your goals to a certain thing, like retiring in the military, you have things you want to accomplish in the military, and then suddenly that's gone. When we lose our focus on something, we're lost. That's how we are as humans. And once that's taken away, that's where we get stressed. Yeah. And for a veteran, that's easy to do. It's not that civilian life is that much harder. It's just we've lost that sight of what we're doing. And then getting back out, and suddenly you could have been in the military 4, 5, 15 years, and you're back starting over. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to work? Do I go back to school? Do I not go back to school? And it's terrifying, especially as an adult. Because when you're a child, you have a parent or somebody that's like, oh, you're going to school. It's not an option. But then when you've done all that and you've been so successful in a difficult job, and then to start over, that's what's scary.
Yeah. I would love to open it up to the audience, Noah, if that's okay.
How's it going, Noah?
Good.
I love hearing your positivity, but I'm curious, where does that positivity come from?
I've always had a great attitude my entire life. My depression was the worst shape I'd ever gotten in and the worst attitude I'd ever had in my life. And it just took me a while to regain who I was again. But I've looked back in my life, and there were things that happened that I was like, oh, that just happens. And I try to pass that on to my children, to not overstress things. There's that saying, we've all pretty much heard, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. And I truly believe that, because I see people all the time that they see the negativity and they focus on it. I had somebody tweeted me the other day and said, do you worry about raising your kids, now with all the bad things going on in the world? And I said, there has always been bad things, there always will be bad things, but there's always been good things, and there will always be good things. You choose. Which I thought was some really deep stuff right there. But it's true. You see what you want to see, and I choose to see the good. And sometimes somebody can say, well, that's being a little gullible, but I don't care. I like to see the good in people, and I'm aware there's going to be bad things. Trust me, I've seen bad things. But I like to see the good, and that's what I look for first and foremost.
Hey, Noah, you are a real American hero, and we here at the BUILD Series do thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Everybody here looks at you as someone who is a source of strength. And I look at people that I know in my life who have these dreams, goals, and aspirations, and for whatever reason, they just can't apply that to really go after what's on their mind and what's in their heart. What would you maybe say to me so I could pass along to them maybe a couple of tips that they could apply to their lives to maybe get to where they want to go?
Well, I'll tell you that, and that actually compares also to fitness, because I've used this example before, where it's like you have to set a goal and say, I'm going to reach this. If somebody wants to be a lawyer, you don't say, all right, I'm going to be a lawyer one day. No, you have to take that first step. My goal first is to enroll in college or law school, whatever it is, taking them baby steps. And in fitness, it's the same thing. You don't just wake up one day, you haven't worked out in 20 years and say, I am going to be a model. I am going to be on stage one day, a bodybuilder, whatever it is. You have to set those small goals, and you have to make those happen first, because we too often look too far out, and then that doesn't happen, and we get discouraged. So you make that first little goal, and then you're like, okay, I reached that one. What's next? So if you have those goals, those dreams, those desires, draw them all out, but then say, okay, let me break it down into sections and do the little ones first.
So you're consistently getting more and more positivity and confidence.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's, it works in fitness, it works in life. You cannot go after something too big too soon. Because I see it, I hate to compare it to fitness all the time, but I see it all the time where people will show up in the gym, haven't worked out in 20 years, and they have this crazy routine they want to follow. They want to be doing ridiculous diet, and it lasts for a week because it wears them out. So they can't handle it. It's like, okay, first join the gym. Second, let's get you on a little bit of cardio. Let's do something at a time. You're not going to do it all overnight. And that's just a crazy way, but we all do it. We all do it.
Since you are an ex-veteran, I'm curious to know your opinion on soldiers with PTSD that choose not to take medication.
Well, all right, so, I can't really speak on the medication side. I am not a doctor yet. I'm working on my honorary doctorate, actually, and I just want to give it to me. I don't want to earn it. No, I was kidding.
I think it's all right.
But, you mentioned PTSD, and that's post-traumatic stress disorder, and a lot of veterans are pushing for, and I love this, it's now PTS, post-traumatic stress, because it is not a disorder. It is something that you go and you get help, you see a doctor, you may need medication, and you move forward. And I get asked the question, what is the system doing wrong for these veterans? And I'm like, we could argue all day about the system, but there is an issue with veterans not making that step, not doing what is necessary to improve. And that's what I'm hoping that this book will do, is connect with somebody that may be going through that, and them to see, hey, yeah, you can get past this. There's nothing wrong with getting help. That's one thing about depression that I really hope that we continue to improve on is, if you have heart problems, you're going to go see a heart specialist. Well, then why do we make it this bad thing that if something is going on with your brain, that someone goes to get help, that we give it this bad look? Yeah. No, you get help and you move on and you improve. And hopefully those veterans do see, and with the encouragement of other people that are going through the same thing, that they do get help, that they go and talk to somebody. If they need medication, that they get on it. Because there's so many different reasons why someone might need it. You know, if whatever it is, if it's necessary, it's necessary. But we can only do so much if they're not willing to take the effort. What can we do?
One more?
Hey Noah, yeah, thanks again for being here. I was wondering, like, from the stories that you've heard from Vietnam veterans and then stories from the current veterans, has it changed at all? Like, has it become easier for them to transition into like civilian life?
The fact that we were sitting here talking about it, this is an improvement. After Vietnam, this would not be happening. This conversation, anybody wanting to talk about this book would not be happening. There'd be a small group of people that would be interested, but it wouldn't be anything that big of a deal. There has been a lot of improvements. Hopefully it will continue to improve. How veterans, are treated in their medical care. Because I know people will bring up the VA, this and that, and I'll say to veterans, so you're in the VA, you're involved, you're going there, and they're like, no. I'm like, okay, then what are you talking about? Are you just going off what you heard somewhere? You have to be involved. The reason you have to be involved, if there is an issue and you've experienced it, well, then you can bring that up, and we can improve that. We cannot improve the system if we're not part of it. And I always also remind them that the VA has improved a lot since Vietnam because of Vietnam veterans. So I don't like it when my generation wants to badmouth a system that they're not even part of and not willing to continue to improve after all the work that these Vietnam veterans have done. And it's going to have to be improved, and it can only be done if the veterans are involved.
Yeah, you talked, just to close, in the book you talk about Walter Reed, and that facility has improved exponentially
Yes.
the past few years. It's
Yes.
really incredible. If you haven't had a chance, it's worth going to see. But you got to want to do it. And they offer these programs there from guys that are coming back, men and women. It's not just the physical, a lot of it's mental. They have the therapist, but if
Yes.
guys and women are not wanting to go to the sessions, then how can they get better?
Exactly.
And it's not about being macho anymore. It's
Yeah.
like you mentioned a mental disorder is the same as a physical disorder. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not
Exactly.
there. So that's what you're trying to get.
And and I'm not sitting here saying, oh, they need to do better. When you read the book, I wasn't part of anything at Walter
Yeah.
Reed. I was the worst patient they probably had. I didn't want to go to physical therapy. I was that same guy. I've said before, when somebody asked me the other day, why do the book now? And I said, now was good, because if I'd have done it a couple years ago, I probably wouldn't have been as honest in the book, because I was brutally honest. It has been stressing me out, the release of this book, because of some of the things that I talk about and how embarrassing they are. But when it comes to the time I was at Walter Reed, I was making those same mistakes. And that's what I wanted to share in this book, to show those mistakes, so hopefully someone following in my footsteps won't make the same mistakes.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your service. Appreciate you coming here, Noah. It was a real pleasure for me, and best of luck with the book. It's at Barnes & Noble tonight. You're going to be having a signing.
Yes, tonight I'll be there signing books.
Tribeca. So thank you, Noah, and thank you for your service, my man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.